Chapter 3 2nd of 19th Special Weapons Group Barracks. Restricted Area, Western Germany. Early winter, 1989. Day 1. Rear detachment was drawn up while the starting martinet they'd left in charge walked back and forth in front of us in his Class A uniform, and the rest of us stood at attention in our Class A's waiting for him to get done with his lecture on just how Rear D was going to be run.
"Not having any of you fuck this up,"
he was blathering. I was only paying half-ass attention to him, instead checking the faces of the other 18 people around me aside from Bomber, Nagel, the lieutenant, and Sergeant T. Bomber stood on my left, Nagel in between us. He'd arranged us into 5-man squads, which was like half the fucking size of my squad, and put what few NCOs there were in charge. Assholes.
"Check in at 2100, and CQ will be doing bed checks at 0 hours. Formation every morning down here at 06 for PT.
He stopped and turned to face us. Only thing worse than an ROTC butter bar was a shiner. First Lieutenant, a nice shiny silver bar to replace the hunk of butter. Most of them seemed to spend a lot of time shining it on their soft cap. With a bright new rank pin. He tried glaring at all of us, but it looked more like he had to take a leak real bad than anything else.
"Everyone will stay in their rooms unless I personally authorize a switch in rooms,"
he said, then nodded at Staff Sergeant Terrence.
"Go ahead and assign them details from the list I gave you,"
he told them. T saluted him, which he seemed pleased about, and we all watched as he returned the salute then walked away.
"All right, guys and girls, the lieutenant has some barracks maintenance he wants done. I'm going to divide you up by squads to go ahead and handle it,"
T said.
"First squad?"
"Here, Sergeant," I snapped out.
"You, Specialist Nagel, and Specialist Bomber are to report to his office,"
he told me, and Bomber groaned beside me. That was never good. I didn't know jack or shit about the lieutenant, except since he'd shown up right after the roads got cleared and everyone abandoned us to go on Christmas leave, he'd been nothing but a grade A asshole. Some worst cav fucker with a serious attitude that seemed to say, "We did it differently in first cav," right before he gave some retarded suggestion that fucked everything up. I hated him with a passion. Formation broke up, with people getting assigned jobs that were vital to national security, like buffing the first floor hallway or scrubbing the tile in the stairway to get the stains out of them. Ha! Fat fucking chance. Or taking inventory and readiness inspection of the chairs in the day room. "What do you suppose Lieutenant Wonderbar wants?" I grunted.
"Probably wants to know if Nagel's tits taste as nice as they look,"
Bomber suggested.
"I'm gonna kick you in the balls,"
Nagel snarled. PFC Keble was sitting behind her desk, sneering at us when we walked into the orderly room. She was sitting there in her Class A's, showing off the AAMs and RCOMs she'd gotten for sucking dick above and beyond the call of duty. Oh yeah, and losing everyone's paperwork. Only thing dumber than an orderly room clerk was a tanker. "Acting CO in?" I asked, unnecessarily. It was fucking snowing again. Ain't none of us were going anywhere. "I'll check," she said, her voice all sweetness and light. I restrained an urge to lean over the desk and punch her in the fucking face. I couldn't prove it, but I knew she was the bitch who'd falsified the paperwork on us. Her sweet little smile when I tried to straighten everything out, and that nasty little smirk she got when she thought I wasn't looking, told me that. She picked up her phone and slowly dialed the number, taking her sweet fucking time like the numbers kept shifting and she hated to wait for the randomization to finish. Her nails, easily an inch in length, were painted bright crimson, with a rhinestone on each one. By contrast, Nagel's nails were chipped, blackened, and she avoided fingernail polish unless it was the weekend or we were going on leave.
"Sir, Corporal Ant and his men are here to see you."
The emphasis she put on the word and the way she looked at Nagel let us all know what she thought of Nancy. "Fuck you, whore," Nagel mouthed, then made a little O with her mouth and pushed her tongue against her cheek a few times.
"I'll tell them, sir,"
she said sweetly, her face hard and eyes smoldering with hate. She hung up and looked at us for a long moment.
"He's ready to see you."
Nagel opened her mouth and I grabbed her by the elbow, pulling her along with me. "Just leave it." I put my Class A envelope pad in my left hand, thumb along the crease, knocked 3 times on the door, and waited.
"Answer."
Oh boy, I was being led into the promised land. I opened the door, marched neatly into the office, and stopped 2 paces from the front of the desk, came to attention, and saluted, holding the salute. "Corporal Ant, Specialist Nagel, Specialist Bomber, reporting as ordered," I stated, staring at the window behind him. It was blank white. The snow was over it by about 10 feet. He stared at me for a long time, making me wait before finally returning the salute, a petty way of letting me know who was in charge. He had my Smith file and my PRP report on his desk, along with Balmer's and Nagel's. They were spread out a hand-width apart, each Smith file rotated just enough that we could tell it was our PRP report underneath it. They were supposed to be secure documents. The PRP file was the Personnel Reliability Program file, a mandatory little piece of Cold War bullshit containing everything from how we liked to fuck to who our teacher was in 3rd grade, along with mental health analysis and all that fun stuff. It was supposed to be eyes only and required a special side clearance to be able to be read. The Smith file was the notes that the CO took on you during your time in the unit. The PRP file was kept in the vault in the supply room, the Smith file in the CO's safe. At least he didn't have the top file, which was the first sergeant's file on you. They were supposed to be for the commander of the unit only. I just knew he was going to spend the day down here reading everyone's file. Asshole. We waited. He should have told us to stand at ease, or invited us to sit in one of the chairs. It was common courtesy. A shiner never bothers with that, and First Cav probably didn't do it that way.
You might be wondering why you're in here.
He started. You want to fuck me.
There are certain details I want to discuss with the 3 of you that I found in your files.
He smiled, and it wasn't a nice one. Nope, you want to fuck us.
Fucking asshole.
Nagel snarled as we headed up the stairs.
I ought to stab his ass.
Who the hell does he think he is asking me that?
Balmer growled, slamming a fist against the top of the railing and making the whole thing vibrate. He's just a goddamn shiner. Let it go, I said. I was still angry enough I was shaking. Fucking Cav shithead. This ain't the world. This is goddamn hell's icebox.
Confined to our rooms until further notice.
Nagel snarled.
We'll be ready to kill ourselves before a week is out.
She snatched open the door to titty territory and stomped through without a word, leaving Balmer and me to head up the stairs to the 3rd floor.
Think we'll have time to hide our contraband?
Balmer asked when we pushed through the door and into the hallway. We hugged the wall so we didn't get in the way of the guy stripping the floor with a buffer and the green stripping pad. He nodded to us as we went by. We'll need to work fast, I told him. I opened the door to our room and Balmer headed to the dresser right off the bat, grabbing bottles. Leave some of the open ones. He knows we drink. Balmer nodded and grabbed a chair so he could climb up to the wall locker set into the wall. I unlocked and pulled open the drawer of my 3-drawer chest, grabbing out a handful of my knives. I left the ones that didn't matter that much, making sure I grabbed the Russian bayonet and my Gerber, then moved over to the fridge, laying down on the floor. Balmer had pushed up the top of the wall locker and was setting the alcohol on top of the locker next to it. I reached back into the fridge and felt around till I found the gap above the compressor and began shoving my knives into the space. Barely enough room for the 5 of them, but better than nothing. Grab my uniform. I want to change real quick. It'll look like we were wasting time, I told him. He nodded and grabbed my keys, pulling open my wall locker and pulling out a fresh set of cold weather BDUs. They were iron and crease, nicely starched and hardly worn. I always kept 4 sets of BDUs for garrison separate from my work uniforms. First trick I'd learned. We hid what we could as fast as we could, then hid stuff we didn't care about in the obvious places. Under the mattress, in our laundry bags, at the back of the bathroom cabinet, under our bed, places any dipshit knows where to check. Not finding anything would make him suspicious. We'd barely gotten dressed when the door opened up. Bastard didn't even bother to knock. Sergeant T followed him in, giving us an apologetic look at the breach of etiquette. The way he strutted into the room just pissed me off. He spent time checking the room for dust. Ha! Fat chance. Then tossed the place, dumping out laundry bags, digging through our wall lockers, and opening up the mouthwash bottles to sniff them for alcohol. Please, a real pro mixes vodka and cherry jello in a strawberry shampoo bottle. Amateur.
Why haven't you thrown this jacket away?
He asked at one point, standing in front of my civilian clothes locker. He was holding the sleeve of my old Levi jacket, holding the cuff between his thumb and forefinger with an expression of distaste. The sleeve was stained with old faded blood. Souvenir, sir, I answered. He pulled it out of my wall locker by the hanger and looked at it. It had been stitched back together, but it was obvious that it had been cut apart at one point. Under the jacket was a t-shirt that was blood-stained. He made a noise of disgust and tossed it on Balmer's bed, then swept his eyes over the pictures I had taped to the inside of the wall locker. Moving to Balmer's personal locker, he stared for a long time at the pictures on his locker before giving it a cursory once-over and walking back into the main room. The whole time we'd stood at parade at the end of our respective beds.
The two of you don't have a roommate?
He asked, somewhat unnecessarily, since the third bed was stripped.
No, sir,
we chorused. He smiled again, and I felt my stomach drop out.
That's perfect. That solves one of my problems neatly,
he told us, that nasty smile reappearing. The kicks to the bottom of the door shook it, and it took Bomber a minute to get up and reach the door, during which time the door kept getting kicked. Bomber yanked it open, and the person on the other side pushed past him, dragging duffel bags, rucksack, and blankets behind them. Outside the door, PFC Hendricks from Motor Pool Platoon stood outside, his expression carefully blank. Bomber shrugged and slammed the door as the person stomped into the center of the room and threw their gear onto the bottom bunk of the sole set of bunk beds in the room.
This is fucking bullshit,
Nagel snarled, throwing herself into a chair.
Yep,
Bomber agreed. He dug out a pack of cigarettes, lit one, tucked the lighter back into his pack, and tossed it to Nagel.
Thanks.
She lit one and tossed the pack to me. What did he tell you his reasoning was? I asked, lighting one up and tossing it back to John.
This way he only has to put a guard on one door instead of having two guards,
Nancy said, blowing smoke at the ceiling.
I am so going to jag when I get a chance. This is against fucking regs.
Yep,
John said again. I pulled a bottle of beer out and tossed it to her.
Did you guys hear what's going on downstairs?
She asked, cracking open the beer and taking a pull off of it. Nope, John again.
He's officially closing the day room, all the rec rooms, the library, and the game rooms. Outside of duty hours, everyone is restricted to their rooms,
Nancy told us, then took another deep pull of the toocher.
God, this is gonna be a clusterfuck.
If it snows tonight, we lose the roads, I grunted, opening a toocher for myself and taking a pull off of it. It was sunny today and the snow looks pretty wet. Shit, Bomber grunted, setting down his own beer and walking over to the window. He opened the curtains and looked outside.
icicles look soft.
You guys want to help me move out of titty territory?
Nagel asked, polishing off the beer. Both of us nodded.
What about Chow?
Bomber asked, closing the curtains.
MREs?
She shrugged.
Is he stupid?
Bomber asked. I just sat and watched.
He said something about ARATs, but I don't know how he plans on heating them,
Nagel told us, and I tossed her another beer. I couldn't believe he hadn't looked under the beds. We'd stashed over 8 cases of beer under there. She cracked it open and tossed the cap into the trash can.
I saw a cocksucking Kebble coming out of the supply room with the room logs.
I groaned at that. One thing the supply sergeants always seemed anal retentive about was making us tell them the serial numbers of anything expensive. TVs, stereos, VCRs, stuff like that. It was supposed to be in case of theft, but I doubted that was what our wonderful Shiner was planning. Fuck. How much do you want to bet he's going to take away my computers? I bitched. What the fuck is he thinking?
He wants to keep a repeat of last year from happening.
Nagel shrugged.
That was a goddamn psycho.
Bomber growled, stomping over and sitting on his bed. He finished his beer and grabbed another one.
It's not gonna happen again.
Bomber kicked the dresser again.
God damn it, he can't do this shit to all of us. This is bullshit.
He doesn't think he'll be here, I grinned. He doesn't know what's going to happen in a few hours.
We'll lose the roads before 1800.
Bomber agreed.
Finish your beers. I need to finish moving,
Nagel told us, polishing hers off in one long drink. We finished our beers, setting them on top of one of the dressers.
Bastard confiscated my vibrators,
Nagel bitched as we headed to the door. When we went to step out, Hendricks stepped forward, putting his arm in front of Bomber and me.
Sorry guys, you two can't leave your room.
You gonna help me move?
Nagel asked, stopping and putting her hands on her hips.
No, but they can't leave.
He insisted.
I'm gonna remember you,
Bomber told him, and the two of us went back to our room. I dragged the chair over to the window and opened the curtain. The icicles had that weird look that they got when it was sunny enough to melt ice, but snow was still pounding hard against the window.
Think we'll lose power this year?
John broke into my dark thoughts of cold and bloodshed. Depends, we didn't lose it last year. That fucking psycho cut the power lines, I told him. Besides, they installed the generators and the fuel tanks while we were gone.
It's gonna be a long winter,
Bomber said. Amen, brother, I answered, still looking out the window. We'd be cut off before dark.